Hi everyone, welcome to Football and Finance, season 1, episode 8 with Sam and Nash. We're back again. 8 and still going strong. We're 8 not out, but yeah. Nash, how was the week?
Good, thanks. Yeah, lots of family time with friends. Due to the long weekend, but all good. You?
Mate, you open up with a family time. You need to talk about those Champions League semi-finals. It's gone out of your head.
I think I missed one when I missed one and then watched the other one, so I might have missed the.
I think it was the Tuesday. I think it was Real Madrid Bayern Munich.
Yeah, I think I might have missed some or half of it, but yeah. There's so much football, and this is going to be my point that I'm going to make. There's too much football. Like for folks who love football, there's actually too much football.
You know what, right? I actually think you're right. There is too much football, but I do think like the quality. It's like Netflix, right? There's so much content, but the content that is good is really good, and the rest is just awful, or not awful. Like Netflix, don't sue me, but like it's just that like there's those crop at the top, and I kind of feel the last 4 weeks of the domestic season, you start to hit the crunch. All the teams are gone. Like none of the teams are getting absolutely wiped in the first leg. It's more or less kind of even. Like, I thought those two Champions League semi-finals, like the Bayern Munich Real Madrid one, like for me, like I missed the beginning. I don't record, so I actually had to watch it, turning all notifications off. But I think for me, like if you look at the teams they knocked out to get there, right? So Bayern Munich knocking out Arsenal and Real Madrid who did Real Madrid knock out?
Not Atletico. Atletico played Dortmund.
It was Napoli, wasn't
it? I'm confused. I really can't remember.
I think it was Napoli. But the thing is, right, you see how like when I look at it going forward, right, I think, okay, if Real Madrid had actually not made it through, and Bayern Munich had made it through, would Arsenal have beaten some of these sides? Like, would Arsenal have beaten Real Madrid? Would they have scored like that game, that first leg was super competitive between Real Madrid and Bayern. I don't think Arsenal would have laid a glove on them. And that's not even me being like an Arsenal hater or anything like that. It's just like when you get to the last four, these are the best teams in Europe. You don't fluke your way there.
They played Man City in the last round, obviously.
Man City? Okay, yeah, the extra time
penalties. I don't know why.
Yeah, so like both games, I mean, they were like, and even the Dortmund PSG, right? That took me back to my uni days doing like £1 accumulators. That game definitely cost people a lot of money because like people would have bet on. Would you have somebody told you that game would finish 1-0? Like 25 shots, like 16 on target to only get one goal. People would have had like both teams to score plus 2.5 goals to get one goal. So many bets got shredded. But I think yeah, it was good week, right? Like, similar to you, like bank holiday, family weekend, but like obviously that Champions League sticks in my mind. And I think that kind of takes us to our first topic about this like Club World Championship, which like people have been talking about it like it's a new tournament. It's been a tournament that's going for years and no one's really cared when it's been in Japan and we're playing Palmeiras in the quarterfinal and Al Ahly in the final and all that type of nonsense. But now, obviously, that tournament's been revamped. Obviously, UEFA, FIFA, all the federations, they thought they weren't making enough bread. Thought how to make more bread. You either create something new or you re-energize a product you already have.
Yeah, and I guess it's a hybrid of both because they're not actually getting rid of the Club World Cup. They're calling that something new and then having this cyclical, well, every 4 years tournament, which, yeah, to me, it's just more football. Like, I can't keep up FIFA, UEFA. I'm struggling. I've got things to do, and you want me to be watching like every game. Isn't there some point where it's like, is it nice to just have a rest from football? Honestly, like in the summer, is it just nice to, it's good. I know it's not going to be in the Olympic year, but it's nice. You just watch Olympics, watch Wimbledon. You know, maybe you're a Formula One person going on during that time.
Mate, they have the summer break in Formula One. That's how I know you're a fan.
cricket season. You know what I mean? Like they have summer break, but they don't have like it's not off the whole summer.
Yeah, it's like 2 3 couple of weeks.
So yeah, I'm a Formula One fan when Lewis Hamilton isn't getting snaked. But anyway, let me leave that. But no, I just think that the Club World Cup is just a lot of football. And I'm not sure it's necessary. I sound like Klopp or Pep saying that it's going to be. I'm not really. I'm not really like here for that. Because yeah, welfare officer for Premier players. No, I think that because if they weren't playing in this tournament, it's funny because the tournament's going to be when's the is it 20? So 26 is going to be in pre-season.
25, yeah. So it's in between. It's like June to July. So I think it's like July. It's like June the 12th to like July the 13th.
It's like Champions League of the world, basically. Like, let's call it. And they're trying to make it into something more competitive than what we currently have in the Club World Cup. But what I find is funny is that it's going to be in the US, the next one, and obviously the US then has the actual World Cup. So it has the Club World Cup, it has the actual World Cup, and they have something else going on in the US. I can't remember, but
the Gold Cup is around that period.
Yeah, it's clear to me that they're trying to like monopolize, tap into that market, and like that's where they see a lot of the new revenue coming from, irrespective of the fact that most European teams and fan bases are going to be like this is the Club World Cup. We don't think it's serious. If it's not Champions League or Premier League, I'm not watching it. But they're trying to tap into that market, tap into that fan base, and with all these different things that are kind of being moved there and used there, which I think is Americans have cash; they have a lot of it compared to the rest of the world, so that makes sense. But what I think is funny is that had they not had this like pre-season tournament, why I don't think like the player welfare argument is like valid or credible is because a lot of these teams will have like a US preseason tournament in the US during that time anyway. So it'd be like, oh, I don't want to play in this Club World Cup. It's too much on the players. And then you go and do your own preseason tournament in the US for the last 4 or 5 years in the exact same country. But that's my thoughts. Well, those are my initial thoughts. What are your initial thoughts?
It was a hard one, right? Because every time we talk about this, we talk about how all football clubs, Premier League clubs, aren't sustainable. They're in financial turmoil, in ruin, and on the brink, and they're always looking for new forms of making money, right? I read an article that was like, I think the Napoli owner was like obviously quite vexed that they lost their knockout game. I think they lost to Barcelona, and obviously Barcelona beat PSG. That's it. Like the winnings for winning the old Club World Cup were $5 million, so like 3.8 million sterling. The winnings from winning the new Club World Championship, I think nobody knows. It's not been fully disclosed, but people are saying it's in the kind of ballpark of like 50 mil.
Oh, okay.
So like it's like I know we've all played pre-season tournaments on our EAFC or FIFA tournaments. I enter this tournament and you win 12.8 million for taking part, right? So this is 50 million. This is like it's not a bad piece of cash to have before your actual season's even started. You're banking that. You're like, oh, nice little 50 mil. That gets us a centre mid. Like you're still in transfer window season. So kind of my first mindset was it's another opportunity for the owners to kind of realize cash in a way, in a period they would already be playing in, similar to what you said, in countries they'd already be going to against similar sides they probably have met. Invariably, like when Chelsea got to the United States, they'll play Barcelona, Real Madrid, Wrexham, and Brighton. But there's always like a couple of top quality matches to test the players. They're usually the last couple, and then your first two, Brighton and all these others, are just kind of a bit of a let's get the guys running and back in the groove. So I do think from that kind of player welfare argument for me goes out the window. I'm like, you're playing in that period anyway. Let's be honest. And also, if you look at the way they've split the tournament, I think UEFA, 6 federations, UEFA got 12 spots, CONMEBOL got 6, AFC, so Asian Football Association or Federation got 4, CAF got 4, CONCACAF got 4, etc. Like, why are we acting like if you're a Bayern Munich or you're a Chelsea, you're really going to be struggling against Monterrey, or you're really going to be struggling against like
New Zealand champions. I can't remember.
Wari Lions FC from South Korea. Apologies if you're not from South Korea, like you are, but I've seen that team name come up a lot. But like, there's a level of like realism where it's like, let's be realistic. Are we stunned if all European and CONMEBOL teams don't make it to the latter ends of that tournament? So they'll dispatch the African teams 3-1 and the Caribbean teams, no disrespect, like, and then it will just be Europe versus South America, and then maybe 2 South American team makes it to the last 8, and it's just repeat of the current Champions League quarterfinal, semi-final, plus Chelsea who weren't in it.
Saying that though, what I think a lot of people may be a little bit annoyed about is because it's all based on, for the European teams, it's the coefficiency, and then the fact that there's 12 teams from Europe coming, but then it's only the top 2 teams from against each of those kind of big leagues. So you have a situation in which, you know, depending on your coefficiency in the last couple of seasons, you could win the Champions League and then not be in the Club World Cup as this Club World Cup, not the Intercontinental or Intercoco or whatever that new old thing is going to be called. And obviously this year, well, the next one, it seems like a few of the big names are going to be missing out. So does that affect the financial attractiveness for sponsorship deals, broadcasting deals, you know, people who are seeing this as an opportunity? I seem to think it's part of the ever bigger like globalization of football, and that's how brands are going to see it. And so therefore, when you don't have the big football brands, Manchester United, Liverpool, talked about this again, like, people can say brands change, but at the moment they have the reach and the brand identity, brand power. Do you think that some of the big sponsors or TV rights that you might have seen with the Champions League as an equivalent, do you think it's going to make that type of not money, but do you think you'll be even in the ballpark figures, you know, of getting something similar? It's not going to, obviously, it's at the same time as a World Cup. It's not going to get that kind of money.
I get what you're saying, but I think the challenge, right, is like, if I was playing it back to you and being devil's advocate, one would say, but in the Champions League, there's been seasons Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal haven't made the Champions League. It hasn't suddenly. Haven't qualified. Qualified for the Champions League. Like, Chelsea weren't in it this year. Chelsea and United weren't in it this year. A couple of seasons ago, it was Liverpool and Arsenal that weren't in it. So there's been years where the big clubs in Europe have missed out. Like, we've been like, oh shit, no Dortmund in the Champions League, no Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. Dortmund are only making it because they've got the coefficient for a 5th German team. I think they're 5th now in the Bundesliga. So they would have missed it this year if not for their performances and German team performances. So I think my first response is, I take the point, but there have been instances where these clubs have missed out. And I think invariably you're right about these mega clubs. I think once you've got enough of them in the competition, like, you've got the Bayern Munichs in there, you've got the Real Madrids in there, you've got like the kind of the big hitters, not all of them, but a good crop of them.
60-70%.
60-70%. That's enough to kind of achieve the outcome they wanted. And also, I think one of the things that they're looking at it from, and maybe it's a different perspective, is I think when we talk about all these topics and these new tournaments and these changing in PSR and these squad ratios, all it spells to me is like, the owners are looking for new way, or the institutions are looking for new way to make more money. And even though the easiest way to make more money is actually UEFA and FIFA give up more of their share, like, because they actually get a larger amount. But instead of doing that, we're going through these iterative processes of changing the structures of the existing tournaments, changing the ownership and rights of broadcasting deals to accommodate for nuances, rather than actually changing the fundamental split of rather than basically split the bread that's currently in front of you and increase the slice of the pie and take from your own plate, UEFA or FIFA, you're creating other loaves. And the owners are like, cool, fine. You're telling me my slice is staying the same or increasing incrementally here, but you're creating all these other loaves so you can eat as well and get more slices, but I get more from that. And they're like, fine, as long as we're getting it. But there will come a point where I think the tournament will have to reach a point where the funds accrued from that tournament may not be, if you're Real Madrid or a big club, maybe you may be like, 51 million. 51 million year one, you're like, yeah, that's a big prize winning, right? That's big. In year 10, when football is exponentially increased even more on that crazy trajectory it's on, that 51 million may be like what the FA Cup finals paying.
Maybe. And I guess, and that's one of the things I thought about. Well, how many people are going to take this seriously from the jump, and how many people will? So, how many people are going to field what is their strongest 11 at the time? Even though take it's preseason.
51 million. Yeah. Yeah.
For like even for everybody else, that's probably a huge figure outside of like the European clubs. I think obviously all the,
but even the European
they're not. 50 million years, it's a lot. I'm not saying it's not a lot, and with PSR rules and FFP, I'm not saying that it's like money that you never had. It's like going into your jacket that you ain't worn in a while and be like, oh, this is nice. I found tenner in my pocket. But the flip side to it is just like, I'm not sure like they will take it as like I don't think that it'd be that meaningful from the jump. I'm not sure if like the reason why the Champions League is like what came first. Was it important to clubs and teams to win it, therefore it became valuable as an asset to sell to others because people played their strongest teams, or was it that the financial reward was that such an incentive that it meant that people played their strongest team? So I'm with this, which is coming first, the chicken or the egg, and we're going to find out. Because remember, we're still having the Intercontinental Cup that's happening every year, which is the Club World Cup doing in another guise.
I see what you mean, right? And I agree. I think, who knows, right? We're just speculating right now. But I actually think you'll get the best players because of two reasons, actually a plethora of reasons, but I'd say these are my two top reasons. I think number one, like the clubs will incentivize the players via contracts. So just like if you played Football Manager, you get bonuses for winning major tournaments. This will be another one that gets added. And if you're a Cole Palmer, season begins on June the 12th, you report whenever, is it end of May after the end of the last season, you report in the first week of June. And you're telling me in my contract, I can get 1.5 million off the jump before I've even kicked the football in the first Premier League game. I'm not saying it's going to be 1.5 million per player. But I'm saying you're telling me I can already get a bonus. Huh? That's like at uni where you're like, before you've even written the essay, they're telling you can get 20% for attendance. You try and get that 20% and max it. You're like, what? So before I've written a coursework or an essay or an exam, you're going to give me 20%. Let me max that 20% out now because that's so easy to get. I'm not saying it's easy to win a tournament, but in that analogy, I think what I'm saying is like the top European clubs know that they could incentivize their players to essentially play in that tournament because it will then come in as part of the major competitions of which their bonuses may be tied to. But I appreciate there's 5 other federations, right? For CONMEBOL, right? If you're CONMEBOL, you're South America, you're Palmeiras, your River Plate, Boca, like Botafogo, you can't incentivize that way. You can't tell Endrick and Estevez, the young Brazilian that Chelsea are interested in. You can't tell these guys, or Paez, who Chelsea have already signed, oh yeah, we're going to give you another whatever, because your business model can't handle that, and it probably can't take it anyway. And you won't go deep into that competition, or you're unlikely to.
Yeah.
But for you, what that does is all your amazing South American wonder kids, they have release clauses on. You're actually putting them up against Jude Bellingham and saying, oh wait, that Brazilian 17-year-old pocketed Bellingham for an hour. So that 50 million You see yesterday an hour, not the full game. Like
that's what I'm saying. That is good. It's going to be like, oh, but yeah, that was pre-season. Can he really do that? There's still going to be questions. Like in that model, like I get it. It's free advertisement, not free advertisement,
yeah,
but you can market your player during that tournament for a lot of these what we're calling I don't want to say, but like feeder teams or like talent rich. That's I'm going to reframe. We're calling talent rich clubs who are shutting their players off and around the world, particularly into Europe for big money. But if people aren't, if others aren't taking it that seriously, if others know that there's teams that which are here are washed, like it can become a place in which people aren't going to put much stock into it, like they have now.
I agree with you, and it's interesting, right? I'm taking a different stance to a stance I've taken with one of my good mates, Charles, right? And when we were talking about the Carabao, and the way what you're saying, I completely agree with. But one of the things that he kind of said that I was actually makes sense is also, I think we as human beings, like you played at Derby County's academy, like when you were younger, like I think we sometimes forget, even if you played in a professional game, academy system, we also forget the competitive nature of these guys. Because even though it is like you will take it seriously, if you're Real Madrid, you turn up to a 32 team tournament, there's 8 European teams, and there's maybe a team that beat you. So let's say PSG get to the final of the Champions League and Real Madrid and lose, right? Pissed. Mbappe then goes to Real Madrid. We already know that. They then get to play them next year in America in the quarter semi-final, where they've not won the Champions League in the 25 season. You're not telling me these players aren't going to be. I think I take your point. Early in the tournament, they're just going to be wanting to get through. When all the cannon fodder, as my old rugby coach used to say, are out of the tournament, and you've now got the big hitters, serious business. Now, like if you're Cole Palmer and you're messing about before against Al Ahly, doing like step overs, running it out from the goalkeeper, and now you're playing Real Madrid and you're up against Alphonso Davies, who's probably going to be the Real Madrid fullback at that point in time, you're like, this is the best fullback in the world. Like, yes, a preseason, I still want to put him on skates. And I think that's where the competitiveness kicks in. And if you're the Brazilian teams, you're like, these European teams think that the Copa Libertadores is trash. And all we are is a feeder club. Let's show them on a consistent basis where Botafogo, I'm just giving an example, but a bad one. Palmeiras play RB Leipzig, they beat them 3-1. Then they play Chelsea, they win 2-0. Then regardless of if you say it's pre-season, at a point, if you beat many big European teams, it's no longer they just fielded kids. I take on the point, but I do think that as the early rounds, it's kind of like the World Cup where England played Trinidad and Tobago in the first group game, win 6-0. Like, but then when it gets into the knockout,
yeah, but you know the viewership for that is crazy. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, but one thing I think on the back of your point is that probably in other countries it's taken more seriously, and those are huge markets still outside of Europe. So let's not kind of be like in our Western views and be like, oh, we don't take it seriously when like the whole world outside. And I guess the other thing in terms of I was going to say about the viewership is that with what you suggested, is there only just going to be 3 games of any value? Which then again, so you're going to have the 2 semi-finals and the final where everyone's going to be like, yeah, this is going to be fire, potentially. Like how we see in the Carabao Cup, basically, where we're like, nobody really cares about it until you get to like semis, maybe quarters, and then they're like, oh yeah, let me play my second string goalkeeper instead of my third string goalkeeper. Like,
you're right. If we're using that example, right, I think the viewership will always be high, and the reason why I say that, right, is because I think as Westerners and people who've grown up in Europe, we take for granted the following some of these teams have. Like, so in Africa, Al Ahly or Enyimba, who've been like the Nigerian version of Man United, just because we don't know them here doesn't mean their following isn't strong in the continent they're at. And it's the same as Palmeiras. If you think of all the Brazilian teams, people talk about like Cruzeiro, Fluminense, Santos, Sao Paulo. Palmeiras isn't one of the ones that everyone. Endrick is who's kind of put them really on the map, right? Like the Brazilian following of Palmeiras across Brazil, and also the links due to colonialism. So in kind of the Spanish, Iberian kind of like Spanish, Portugal, etc., is probably quite substantial. It's just not substantial for us. We're like, oh, somebody tells you they're a Palmeiras fan, and they're like, who? Parma? Like, I thought they played in Serie A. So I think I think it's like the markets of football are greater than we think they are outside our own continents. But because of the way they're broadcasted, like if you think about broadcasting of the Copa Libertadores, the tournament, I've actually been following it a bit more last couple of years. It's actually a really good tournament. Quality of football is very high, but the BBC only show it when it gets to the semis or the finals. But if you actually follow it online, streaming services, etc., you watch some of the games and you're like, oh wow, like what was it? The Battle of the Wonder Kids last week. It was Endrick and Estevao versus Kendra Paez, the Ecuadorian Nigeria signed. Nigeria? I'm dreaming. Nigeria signed one that Chelsea have signed. And that game was incredible. It was like literally back and forth. And people were saying, this is basically the future of Chelsea and Real Madrid. You're watching play out for the next 10 years.
One of the things I think might impact it, and this is only in a kind of short-term view, is that many of our top clubs have American ownership. So at the next tournament in 25-26, they're going to be like, you guys are playing in my hometown. This is where I can make bread. Like owners will push down to say, like, I'm talking about the American ones. I think, is it more than half of the club are either majority or minority owned, American owners, shareholders? I think it's around 10 to...
You work at Arsenal, Man United,
Liverpool, Chelsea. I think it's like 11, between 11 and 12, something
like Burnley. Yeah,
somebody in the comments, let us know. We'll try that one for us. But yeah, so I feel like they will say, yeah, can you, like they said, whether it's incentive-based contracts or like just general atmosphere around the club, knowing that this game might be played in Nashville, and I'm from like this. My origins are from Nashville.
Oh, Nashville FC.
Yeah, like nonetheless. So that's where I can see that for this upcoming tournament there may be a bit of more, a bit more bite, but we'll see. One thing that you mentioned and kind of brings us to the next topic was around kind of online streaming services and I guess viewership. And I think one of the things that we want to touch on this episode is Sky and Sky Sports and broadcasting and just kind of, I guess,
the
globalization of football, the monopoly of football in this country in particular. And I guess I had some initial thoughts around it, and I think just knowing how
context. I think you should give us some context into it before you dive in.
No, go ahead.
No, you can. I was saying that before you kind of dived in.
Oh, are you talking about the new deal?
Yeah, because I thought like some of our followers might not have picked up what's happened, because I guess it's a story that's kind of like, I don't want to say gone unreported because it has been posted everywhere, but it's not.
I mean, I guess it's not necessarily for the Premier League, so maybe that's why I was interested in it. But essentially, the English Football League has penned a new deal with Sky Sports. I think it's almost £1 billion over a much bigger period, though, over like 5 years. 5 years. 935. And that's obviously throughout the kind of Championship, League One, League Two. I don't think that has it got bits of the conference. I don't think it's got the conference deal attached to it. And one of the things that kind of that money is then obviously going to be all divvied up. They're going to be different ways that they're going to be looking at it in terms of who gets what money when. But one of the things that has emerged from this contract, I think, is the new forms of broadcasting games. And I guess online streaming, and I guess, I don't know what I wouldn't describe it as, like direct consumer in almost, but like less middleman in between you watching it and the person who is providing the content, which are the football clubs, basically. And if there's that again don't know, there's been during the kind of pandemic, there was a shift of some sorts to help almost rescue those teams really, because they couldn't get fans back in the stadium, to again have their own, not their own platforms, but a somewhat of a, I guess, personalized or get like direct one-on-one stream service for your club. So you could pay to stream all of your Plymouth Argyle games. So if you wanted to watch Plymouth Argyle, like as long as they weren't in the restricted window, which UEFA has allowed national governing bodies to have. I think it's 2 3/4 hours.
Yes, 2.5 hours.
Where you can plan games. Why we don't have games at 3 o'clock? So yeah, and people have been making a lot of money from that. As it's kind of like a football side hustle, isn't it? It's almost like a lower league club side hustle, because they're not making huge sums of amounts of money, but it's significant enough for them. And depending on your following abroad, if you think of like the Wrexhams now, who obviously again American ownership, where you have these people like expats, you want to call it, who might live across different countries, not able to get to games. But then it's also following the pandemic and what the issue was there, where it was originally envisaged as this kind of thing for international audiences. It kind of seeped in like, oh, could we do this domestically? And could we make from people who actually live in Plymouth to watch Plymouth Argyle? And yeah, and that's part of the money that they make it. And I think the Sky's recognised that it, I don't know, maybe needed to not double down, but I think it still wanted to be like the biggest player when it came to lower league football, and it didn't want to, whether it's Amazon, Netflix, all of these people who have much bigger streaming service than that. Is it called iFollow or iFootball?
iFollow.
Like, then they didn't want to, be edged out anymore and lose any more of their market share to come with these smaller entities. And I guess it's like the club ownership. And I think I talked about this before in terms of like clubs are finding all different ways to kind of stream their own content. Everybody's doing their own content, like whether it's training them filming them at the training ground, watching them come in, or be on the team bus, watching them like wherever it is. Like people want the content, people are willing to pay for it, people are willing to add sponsorship and advertising attached to it. And I think Sky, this deal reflects, I think Sky trying to be like, we're still the biggest, we're still the best. And there's some tweaks in the deal to make it aspirational for clubs to get to the higher levels of the championship, but it's not as heavily weighted as I think before, where a lot of the TV money went to the teams that are on TV all the time, which used to be Derby, funnily enough, Derby, Leeds, kind of the bigger markets, with like big TV following, who then wouldn't able to go. Not they wouldn't be able to watch their team, but teams would inevitably be playing not on a Saturday at 3 o'clock because they want to have them like as standalones somewhere in the midweek.
I think my issue with it, right, is I think so. I remember like I got two stories. So I remember like 4 years ago, I think we were both at the FA at the time, maybe. But I met two guys at like a sports conference event. Like these two, they were Boa Vista fans. So for a lot of our listeners, many people don't remember Boa Vista. So when Porto were big under Jose Mourinho, it was actually Porto, Boa Vista. It wasn't really Benfica and Sporting Lisbon. Boa Vista fell away, and they're now in the cauldrons of the Portuguese pyramid. But the reason I mentioned the story is two friends set up something called Maikuju. So it's basically when Boa Vista got relegated from the Portuguese Liga, they created a streaming platform where, because they didn't live in Portugal anymore, they could still watch the games. And it was really simple when they set my Kudru. You were a Boa Vista fan, you still went, you had a season ticket, you could record it as long as the phone met certain specifications. They'd work with the clubs to make sure it met all the kind of rights and copyright type stuff, and then it'd be posted. So you could be around the world, you'd watch it from an iPhone, whatever was the latest iPhone then, or whatever the top quality phone or camera was, and you could watch it. And obviously streaming has evolved since then, right? And one of the things that got to me when I looked at the deal and I talked about like 135 million over 5 years for what is it, 69, 76 teams. So a Championship, League One, League Two. So 23 teams in each league, let's say roughly. So 69 teams, right? Is I think fundamentally there's a challenge that all the league clubs don't understand. And this is probably where you could see there's almost an exercise that needs to be done called a market scan, where if you're a Derby County, it's probably easier if you're a Derby County than you're Rotherham, is understand your reach. So when clubs say they're a global club and you talk about institutional clubs, understand what the reach is. So it's the quality of your brand and how far it permeates markets, continents, countries, regions around the world. And I feel if they did that exercise, they would actually realize for many of the clubs, not all, for many of the clubs, this is a bad deal. Because when you actually look at it, like I think they said, some clubs may make 400, 300,000, some may make less than that. It's still inequitable in the way it's been calculated and created. And a lot of the mechanics are still to be ironed out. But I feel like there's a distinct undervaluing of the quality of the product that these teams have, whether or not they're successful or not, just because of the following they have. Like Derby County, right? And a really good example, Birmingham and Sunderland. I had a lot of friends from uni who were Birmingham and Sunderland fans. Sunderland get 25,000 to their stadium in any league. That's insane. Like, they've been full in the Premiership, full in the Championship, full in League One in terms of to get tickets to. Whenever they make playoff finals, whether it's League One or Championship, the allocation all gone instantly. And their market is actually quite global, whether or not we as London club fan supporters or Premiership teams will acknowledge it. And I kind of feel that the deal is pretty short-sighted. And when I say short-sighted, it's because they've given them a bit more than they were earning previously on average. And that's been enough for clubs to kind of sign up to the deal rather than actually do that exercise of what is the value of the market. And I actually think, right, with the right infrastructure, with the right analysis and research, clubs could actually do the streaming themselves. And quite a few clubs that you mentioned, Derby and Leeds have invested heavily in setting up their own channel. And that's because they understand their product. Like Derby County and Leeds, you could go to like places in Peru, you can go to places in like Vietnam, and they're very well followed as a traveling, as an offering. Everyone knows about Pride Park or knows about Ellen Road, etc., even before all the documentaries that have come out about those clubs. And I kind of feel that they've sold themselves short, and Sky have probably preyed on the fact that I think the Bradford owner said he didn't really agree with the deal, but he didn't want to be the guy to be going against. And it's like, to me, that sentiment has always annoyed me. Like, if everyone's like getting hustled at a market stall, I'm not going to get myself hustled by going, oh yeah, I don't really agree that this is the right price for this bracelet that I'm going to buy my sister or whatever. Oh, let me buy it because no one is complaining. Like, I find that sentiment, I wouldn't say it's weak, but I don't think that's a strong enough narrative for the deal that they're selling. And also, what kind of blew my mind is Article 48, which is what you were talking about, the blackout, the 2.5 hour window, is still not something that's been taken off the table. I kind of feel like if you're going to get the raw end of the deal, so for example, when the NFL added the 18th game or the 17th game, sorry, I'm jumping a step. NFLPA, no, we've only just signed the 17th game. But when they added the 17th game, the players were very clear and the NFLPA about, okay, you're adding an extra game. The contracts are calibrated for a 16-game season, right? Everything has been created for a 16-game season. You're adding the 17th game. There has to be a change in, we need to be getting more than just a bit more money. Like, And I kind of feel that the clubs didn't do the same. And maybe it's because if you're making 200 grand with your own streaming and somebody gives you 300, you're like, ooh, that's a 50% increase, let's go, let's go. Like your accounts team are like, sign it up, lock it in. But no one's going, hold on, let's do some analysis, right? Like, what is our following globally? What do we believe is the total streaming value of our product across regions? And do we believe doing it by ourselves with the right infrastructure, we can exceed that number? And that's the bit that kind of frustrates me.
Yeah, I think I understand. But a lot of these clubs do not have that level of expertise. They probably have to go externally for a consultant to help them do that, and then
Work, mate.
I guess how much they're going to make. Yeah, I'm not saying the Warrior is a good or necessarily bad deal at this moment in time. For me, the biggest takeaway was just how dominant Sky are still. And even to the point where it didn't feel like there was anybody really out there who was going to make a offer that was close, whether that's BT or Amazon or Netflix or whoever. I don't know.
Isn't innovative though, like because I look at the deal that the NFL are about to do with Amazon, I think it is, or with Netflix. The product, as in the content, is high quality. The way the content is managed and perceived is like it's not great. Like look at I always use this analogy, right? The NFL, the NBA, they have 32 teams, right? There's 32 teams. It's played, their sport is not global. Basketball, we can say it's global, blah, blah, but it's really America and a pocket of a couple of countries. NFL is maybe one country and a sprinkle of Germany if we really want to go there. And I'm not forgetting my Canadian people, CFL, yes, I know, but it's not the same, whatever. But if you look at the value of the TV broadcast deals that one sport played on one large country is able to generate compared to football, that's the sport of the people, global sport, global appeal, the numbers don't add up. They don't make sense. And I think it's because the narrative, the way the product is sold, the offering, like NBA, perfect example, NBA player or the app, that was, they were one of the first early adopters of that, actually saying, do you know what? Got people who live in the UK, they don't really we're staying up till 3 a.m. They have jobs. How do we bring the content? 90-second highlights, short clips, points, like replays. Like they were thinking about how to create and cut the content they already had in so many different ways before even NFL Game Pass, which is the NFL version. Before, and I kind of feel like that you're right, and I agree with your point. Carlisle, Rotherham, Doncaster Rovers, Burton Albion, they can't pay to do this. They're not large enough, right? Yeah. Leeds can. Derby and Leeds definitely should be. Sunderland definitely should be. Portsmouth definitely should be. Southampton, like, I know they may come up into the Premier League, so it's a little bit different. But some of these clubs, Birmingham City, where you can't get a season ticket for love or money, like they send, I think I heard this stat that Birmingham City, including the Premiership teams, send the second highest away fans to away grounds. This is irrespective of location. Like, so this is, I'm just really surprised more at the top clubs in the EFL not signing.
Can you bring up a point around, I guess, copyright infringement? Because I guess that's one aspect I think where Sky is actually scared and is putting resources in to prevent its copyright from, whether it's like IPTV, all these different Fire Sticks and websites and all this kind of stuff. I think they recently won a High Court case on the 3rd to get not just the not, I guess, about to be heard, I guess, which is like they're going after not the websites, but who host the websites. Yeah. So it's like going further back into the supply chain in order to prevent their copyright infringement. And I'm not sure, again, those clubs that you just named want to take that battle on independently. So if they do have this content and then Joe Blogs is setting up a country, in somewhere far, and is undercutting them, and then do they really want to take up that responsibility, like Sky, who has deep pockets, to go to the High Court and sue them over copyright infringement? Like that's long for them.
That's true, but then there are all the games that are included in that package. Sky will not make all of them available, right? And I feel like, so for example, what was quite interesting is if we look at the blackout games, right? Like Sky will be, so clubs can't stream 3 p.m. games currently, right? Neither can Sky. Sky may stream some of them that they've selected via their streaming device, but they're not going to allow clubs where they've got a game at 3 p.m. that they haven't selected to stream it. And this is where, like, I think that the issue is as the level of executives and executive leadership, like you said in one of our previous podcasts, you were like, director of football roles didn't exist. Like now they're professionalized, they're businessmen, they're people who've worked in the city. As executive leadership stops being John, who started at Leeds United when he dropped out at 17, stayed at Leeds United to 37, and became the chief commercial officer, and actually become commercial officers that have come from private sector businesses. As those start to churn and those roles start to change, you'll see people actually start asking the question. They'll go to their finance or they go to the head of broadcasting and the company and say, Nash, what's our global audience, or how many fans do we predict that we have as Derby County fans across the globe, across the continent? You provide that information, or you'll have a rough guess. Okay, and what's our following online on all our social media pages and all our accounts? What's our level of engagement? And they'll start to do these calculations and then sit and look at the numbers and say, okay, we're in a championship. We have 46 games, right? Sky currently show 28 of our games. There are 18 of our games that are not shown or televised. Our stadium is a 29,000 stadium, etc. We've got a following of multiple million around the world and 18 games that are not shown. Maybe as part of the new deal, we are not part of it, or we go to other clubs that have a similar type of standing in the English Football League heritage and say, guys, Norwich, Derby, Leeds, Portsmouth, Southampton, all these teams, like we form our own consortium where we actually remove ourselves from the Sky, from the current Sky package. Also, it is this broadcasting melee. This is one of the key reasons why the European Super League has been deemed to be so attractive, because they've said that actually the way it currently is cut does not benefit them. It does. Like if I find £10, like it's like they're still losing to Sky in terms of the larger amount of the cash, and the whole rationale that's been provided is Sky manages it all and gives you 30-40% more than you're doing. It's just my concern that, like, I'm really surprised that some of the bigger clubs weren't like, hang on a minute, this isn't like, it sounds good, but if you're willing to give us 40% more than we were making last year, you're clearly seeing something like that I'm not.
Well, I guess what I think is that Sky's dominance is going to continue, obviously, for the foreseeable future. I'm not sure, and even when I talked about competition, I'm not sure competition actually helps, because when you think about the different packages that you have available with BT, remember back in the day we had Santanta. Remember Santanta that struggled? I think ESPN took over for a little bit, and I guess what's happening for the consumer now is that you need 2 subscriptions, don't you? So you need to have BT and Sky. So actually, it's almost like 2 monopolies are worse than one. Is that a duopoly? I don't know.
Duopoly.
Maybe
It's actually it's a duopoly.
Duopoly. So even if there was they had different packages, different bundles in which they was trying to look at as a model, then you still end up then having to convince, or Sky ends up having, and you're invariably then going to be having some games on one and some games on other, and as a consumer, I think that probably puts a lot of people off, because I think a lot of people who support, I don't want to say support lower league teams. Like they're anti-big corporations. Like, some of our teams in lower leagues are like they're not huge fans of Sky and their broadcasting, and kind of because they feel like they're just kind of taking money out of the game, making it more expensive for people to go to all these sorts of, and that's why I support a team locally, almost in that sense, that's not associated with the Premier League or isn't so tied to it naturally when you think of who is in the Premier League. And so therefore I'm thinking as just from like a consumer basis, if there was a second big player in the market, it actually wouldn't drive up prices. It would probably just end up in terms of like what drive up prices for the money that goes to clubs. It would end up drive up prices for what you'd have to pay to watch it.
Yeah. So, basically, what you just outlined is what we have now, and this is why for me I kind of feel like we've tried the one source, Sky. We've tried the two sources, like you just outlined, Sky BT, Sky Satanta, Sky ESPN, Sky TNT, whatever you want to call it. We've also tried a kind of a fragmented offering where Amazon and Netflix do the Boxing Day games and the Easter games, and so get YouTube, get the highlights, etc. We tried that model, and also that hasn't proven beneficial towards viewers, because you then have to have a Sky, a Netflix, an Amazon, a YouTube. Like, you're basically just paying for more subscriptions, which is why I'm kind of like, then isn't there one option we're all avoiding? The most obvious one, where you just bring it in-house, where like Leeds, United, Chelsea, United, you have 750 people. Jim Ratcliffe is getting rid of quite a lot of you anyway. Like, surely you turn to the commercial guys and go, within the commercial team, commercial rights and broadcasting, there will now be a function that focuses on how we deliver this product to end users ourselves. Like, surely that is the next iteration. We tried all these, and the 3 p.m. rule of, we created that so people will go to games. Well, like that whole statement is no longer true. It's kind of like, it's like stamp duty, right? Stamp duty was created to fund some Anglo-French war in 1497. That war ended like half a millennium ago, but we're still paying stamp duty now. Like, and that's the same with football. Like, yeah, it was funded so people would go to the stadium. People are going to the stadium. Every stadium's got high attendance. So how about you start showing the games, and then people wouldn't have IPTV and all the other companies that Nash has hotted up that are now probably going to go under.
I didn't name any companies. I'm just saying that there's services out there for those who are wanting to flirt with the law. Put it that way.
You're sounding like that guy who passed away recently in Harry Potter, who played Dumbledore. He's like, help will always be available for those who seek. Like, when he says it to Harry, you're sounding like him. You just want to tell them that you'll help sort them out. Let them know.
That is definitely not what I'm saying. I'm not.
No, I know you're not. I'm just messing with the Harry Potter, Harry Potter analogy. But I mean,
no, I do think that's the biggest risk to them, to Sky at the moment, and I think that's why they're heavily investing in these legal court cases and lobbying governments, like legislation everywhere. Italy, here, where else are we going? I think Spain may have passed something as well, or maybe it might have been France. With whereabouts is Dazan? I think Dazan is Italian, maybe.
They do Syria. They also do some.
Yeah, so, like they're getting hot on it, and it's funny because Sky was the beneficiary of technology, wasn't it? It like satellite TV came into our lives in the early 90s, and Mama Murdoch and I think Sir Alan, they were like, "Oh, there's bread to be made here. We can turn this thing into, like, beam it globally, and you get the first Sky TV deal. Great, fantastic, leveraging technology for good." But as much as people leverage it for good, people will leverage it for other ways as well. And what I see is the biggest risk to them is that, like, the internet is massive, like the dark web, like all these different things. It's like it's almost uncontrollable to a certain degree, and actually governments are behind on legislating. When you think of like artificial intelligence, I know that we're going in other areas now, but like we're playing catch up with a lot of these things. So these big institutions like Sky, where obviously they put massive amounts into research and development, so they try to stay ahead of the curve as well. But with the way that technology is at the moment, like they shut one down, another one appears, like 10 more appear. Do you know, like or they use slightly more sophisticated technology, you know. So you shut down this streaming service. Back in the day, I remember being at uni, don't sue me now, but Putlocker was the one. Like all your uni friends was using Putlocker, like to stream all different types of stuff. Now, like, yeah, these different services exist which are more nuanced, more expertise, more like commercially operated in a sense. Like they may be criminal gangs that be running them and or whatever, but what I'm saying is that they're more professional in a certain way. Like I saw one where it was saying like the guy had like 50,000 subscribers. Like that's 50,000 people subscribed to your streaming service. That's crazy. So like what I think for them, as much as like they're fighting the battles with the clubs from like the bigger pie, they're also going to be fighting it with the end consumer now, who's like, nah, you man are taking the mick out of me too. And so, you know, with heavily undercut prices or even for free, some of these things, that's where I feel their biggest challenge, and the fact that nobody really knows what new technology is going to happen, which then just takes it away in an instant. Do you know? Like that means, and then the law it's like 5 years behind, you know, in order to get to a place of legislation which is going to combat that particular problem. Then boom, again, another type of nuanced or derivative of what it just happened changes everything. So then they have to move in a different direction. Well, Sky is still making money. Rupert Murdoch's, I'm not going to cry for him. He's okay.
I think that the danger though is with all these type of like, I know we're talking about championship now, and we've moved into the streaming, not just TV broadcasting deals, is ultimately the reason clubs go along with it now is it meets their interests. It provides for them financially for them to fund their business. And as you and I have discussed multiple times, what's the biggest cost to a football club? It's wages, it's player wages. When that stops to cover it in the way that they are happy with, they will look for alternative means. And this takes us into kind of one of our like final areas around like clubs now. So you think about it, clubs are selling homegrown players predominantly to balance their books. When selling their players to balance their books no longer is possible, when you sell two academy graduates to now 23, 24 elite players for 145 million and you still can't balance your books, you ain't going to sell 5 or 6. Well, as soon as you'll sell one, okay, that you got away with it because that one went for 90 million, bam. You sell, and then a couple of years pass, you sell 2, you're like, okay, we were well covered at right back. We got 4 right backs coming. We could get rid of that. It's 200 mil. When you can't cover your costs at this point, you will then look at more drastic measures. And this is where when I say talking about homegrown players, like where is this? What is fueling this, right? What's fueling this is, 1, clubs are overspending and therefore aren't living within their means. 2, football, like you said, is on a trajectory that it's never seen before based on the digitalization, the technology, the want of more content. And 3, the owners now are being penalized or are being forced to operate within a structure that is just not feasible, with exception of a couple of clubs who managed to do it. Brighton, shout out, and all these others. In Brentford, nobody else is. So selling homegrown players is now the flavor of the month. Is where we're at.
Well, I think that has combined with actually there being better homegrown players. Like, not gonna lie, the before, say like 10 years ago, our homegrown players were not it 10, 15 years ago. I'm talking about like after the golden generation.
Hey,
They,
get money for homegrown.
so I can't remember. I'm gonna have to find the tweet, but I saw a tweet about something like there was a under 21 World Cup in the like early 2000s or something like that, and then it was England, Germany. It was under 17s. I can't remember, but anyways, 5 of that squad on the German side who won went to the World Cup and won, like Ozil, Khedira, Neuer won a World Cup. 7 of that squad, of the England squad, ended up at Sunderland. Like, bro, like,
Wait, hold up.
I'm gonna find it, bro. I'm gonna find it.
They ended up at Sunderland though. But was
Man, they ended up. It's like,
Sunderland in the Premiership though?
like, I need to find this.
Were these the years that Sunderland won the Premiership though? Because we're laughing, but if they're in the Premiership or the Championship, that's still
the Premiership or the
Championship football.
Come on, like, I need to find this thing, bro. It was so I saw it and I was like, nah, that can't be real.
But the thing is, whilst you're looking for that, even as you're laughing, right? Look at the young kid that Crystal Palace signed from Blackburn Rovers, right? 15 million. And like, if you think about it, that's Championship football. And why are Blackburn doing it? They've got financial challenges. He's one of their most valuable assets, and invariably, I think this selling of homegrown players and the emotiveness has been created by not a couple of people. That's not fair. It's been created by a media that want to fuel and propagate stories because there's a lack of stories out there, and ex-footballers who pretend they don't understand the business they were a part of. Like the question I always say to you, right? When you were at Derby, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I assume that Derby do not turn around to every academy player and say our goal is you will all play in the first team. First team players. They don't guarantee that.
They always say like none of you are gonna make it. Maybe one of you.
Yeah. So this whole idea of selling homegrown players, it's built in the model. So Derby have under 14, under 15, under 16, under 17, under 18. When you get into the men's, the unders are irrelevant. Whether you're under 17 or under 20, you're suddenly in the first team at the same age, apart from one of you is 21 and one of you is 18. So when you get out of the age groups, you're all in the senior men's. It's similar in rugby. You play in all those great levels, you get to the Colts, then it's men's rugby. No one cares that you're 24, you're 19. You still get hit the same, you're treated the same. So when I think about it that way, I'm kind of like, the selling of homegrown players is endemic in the model of academy football. What people might be taking issue with now is that back in the day when Chelsea were letting the Dominic Solankis and all these guys leave for 3 million, and no one was batting an eyelid going, oh, Chelsea just let this guy go. What's now pissing people off is now they're like 50 million Aaron Wan-Bissaka's, they're like 50 million Conor Gallagher's, etc. That's what is pissing people off, because the sale of academy players happened 10, 15 years ago. It's the numbers weren't this high.
I think one of the things I think about when it comes to English players and whether there's like a premium on English players, and I do think people obviously there's that natural like this hasn't cost us any money, but that's not that true. Like academy football is very expensive. Like we know people who work in academies and they are full on organizations by themselves. They could be like a mini company. So like there's huge amounts of operational costs related to like producing the talent. And this was a strategy of like basically the Premier League and the FA. They might pat themselves on the back for this because they realized at like a point, maybe a decade or two ago, like actually the talent we're producing is dead, which is what I talked about. I think it was the 2009 under 2009 under 24s final. England lost to Germany. 6 of Germany's squad went to win the World Cup. 7 of England's players went on to play for Sunderland. So I think they saw that we weren't producing the talent that was going to like actually compete in those like Champions League levels, those European Cup levels, like the proper echelons. They weren't breaking through to the big six teams. We weren't really getting those guys. Like we had Wayne Rooney, and then after Wayne Rooney, it was like, ooh, who else really came through? And so what I think is that a heavily amount of money has been invested in those things. You know, we went away from making under sevens play 11-a-side football, actually got proper coaches in to teach them technically the skills of playing football, which we got pitches that you can play on all year round, you know, all these different things. I'm not saying it's a perfect system, because if you look at France and you look at like their kind of local development academies, I think outside of PSG, nobody has a professional academy. But what I'm saying is that's a model that they've invested in, and it's proven being football for French football. And you know, these kind of local soccer excellent camps or academy. And then you've got in England, you've got the academies, which the Premier League basically says you have to have a category 3 type academy set up. I think Brentford might be the only one who doesn't have the academy.
They've got a B League system.
Yeah, yes.
They sold it because all their top talent were getting rinsed by Chelsea, and Arsenal.
So exactly, and so like, why are we doing this when why am I having an academy that's not producing what it's supposed to? And so therefore, I think the money's been put in it. So like, what comes out of it needs to be money. Like I know, and that's a crude way to kind of describe academy graduates, and it I guess it's also what this ignores maybe slightly is like some of these academy graduates are being poached from like 12, 11, 13. If these mans are ballers and people see that from day, they're like, oh, you're playing at, let me think, Charlton Athletic. Oh, okay. What? Have you ever heard of Arsenal Football Club or Chelsea Football Club? You know, we'll make sure you get to school on time. In fact, we'll bring you to a new school. All these sorts of things. They're getting poached earlier and earlier. And so, also, then it then leaves those kind of clubs where, you know, even before you can sign a contract, you're being sold for tens of thousands, maybe, and then in 10 years' time, they're being sold for exponentially, like, yeah, you said the 50 million is Conor Gallagher, like what we're thinking, like 60 million, 70 million. You're going to be irked by that, but you're also not. There's also been lots of money put in by those professional teams to create these. So it's almost like a chef really has, like a high-end restaurant has the best chefs. They're paying them hella wages. They buy all the best quality food. And so they sell their food at ridiculously high prices. Even though you may think you buy salmon, you sell salmon, like, nah, their salmon is different. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's the thing I always feel like people miss out on. They don't understand, like, I think as people go on the balance sheet, if you sell Mason Mount, if you sell Conor Gallagher, if you sell Marcus Rashford, it's zero and it's pure profit. But if you think about, okay, Marcus Rashford, 26, Conor Gallagher, 24, right? They've been at Chelsea and in United since they were 17 years. So 17 years, there has been probably multiple coaches on salaried income that have been coaching them and all their other colleagues and players at their age group.
Not just their coach, bro. Do you know how many people are involved in this?
I'm starting with the coaches. I'm saying you had the coaches, you then had 2 physio doctors, you've got an academy doctor, like all those people's salaries, plus then you then
psychologists. These men are taking flights to Italy, they've got tournaments in Spain, they've got tournaments in Florida, like even at under 10 levels, I'm telling you.
And if they move your family because to be close to the club and they send you to Epsom College or Whitgift, those schools aren't free. So you're probably picking up your school fees as well. So when they talk about all these stuff, I'm like, let us add up all the true costs. Like, yeah, from an accounting perspective, from the Premier League, Conor Gallagher's zero to them. And it's a terrible model you're using as Palmer's. But from a Chelsea perspective, I think I've read the stat that most academies operate at a loss or just about break even. And then the thing that's also wild, when you talked about the Brentford example and their like B League system, I believe in an article when they were asking or they're explaining why they were getting rid of it, they actually calculated the cost on average of training a player from a certain age to the men's level, etc. The actual cost. And one of the things they said is you invest so much in this guy, and then at 16, Arsenal buy him off you for 300 grand. And then it's like, okay, great. Then he then goes to start for Arsenal, ends up being the next Cesc Fabregas. And then the only solace you can get is when Brentford play Arsenal, you chant he's one of our own. Like that's what you get for it. And they get a £50 million midfielder. So I think there's almost.
Do you think there needs to be these defined clauses or add-ons then for that's maybe where some of the, particularly like the lower league teams that get poached, do you reckon there needs to be more regulation in terms of if talent is being taken for what at the time what then turns out to be a nominal fee, like we talked about with talent overseas, where a lot of these players maybe end up playing in Portuguese league or French league or Dutch league, and then they've got add-on clause that kind of means that they have that money, because I guess that I can see why like lower league English teams feel like they're getting shafted when a player that they train for 5 years ends up being just an ordinary midfielder and gets sold 50 million.
But I think clubs are beginning to do that. So, for example, one of my friends, Toto, one of his friends works at a Premier League club, but he used to work at he worked at Welling, and I think Welling were the people who first found Mason Burstow. So like Mason Burstow is the like academy kid at Chelsea who's meant to be like ridiculous, 17, 18 years old, credible forward. They signed him from Charlton, but via Welling. And one of the things you see a lot of these clubs do, like Welling, is they protect their own interest. So they do put things in so that it's not like Mason Burstow there. I think he was on a bench in the first round we were in for the Carabao Cup. But they protect their interests where they can see the players. I think what you're seeing now is at the lower level, like whether it's AFC Fylde, whether it's Welling, whether it's Aldershot Town, whether it's Fleetwood Town, where Jamie Vardy and other players have come from, they're beginning to understand that there's a lot of gems and like that rough diamonds in that division at various age groups, whether they're 24 years old or whether they're 17. And they're protecting their interests to make sure they're getting paid the right amounts that they believe that they should be earning. But I think invariably, there's almost I sometimes feel responsibility, and I guess it's easy for them to forget this responsibility because they're all getting paid for by Sky, like we were just speaking about, BT, for ex-players, whether you're Jamie Carragher, you're Roy Keane, or Phil Neville, to actually like be honest and say, you went through the academy system at Manchester United, you played at the Cliff, you were at Carrington, you understand the amount of players in your age group, the amount of coaches and support staff that were around you to get you to your first senior men's Manchester United game. So this whole narrative of like, oh, just Farm League is set up. How much did United invest in you in those 12 years? Coach, chef, physio, analyst, doctor, like whatever, everyone, kit man, like
Education, everything.
Education. They sent you to that private school up in Trafford or Stretford or Cheshire. How much do people actually calculate that? Albeit I'm not defending the owners and saying, oh yeah, Chelsea have put 25 million into Conor Gallagher. Of course not. What I'm saying is, in Conor Gallagher's age group, there have probably been how many kids in an academy level in an age group? So under 17, how many do Chelsea have signed up?
Maybe like 16, 17, 18. Obviously, you've got people on trial a lot. In terms of people who who get their kind of academy contract at age 16, there's not going to be loads. Maybe half of the like under 16, but then there's another cut when you get to 18, if that makes sense. So
over
a lot of those players in that time will end up going to lower league clubs, whether it's at Burton Albion or whatever.
Over a dozen kids across age groups.
Yeah, for sure.
That are being supported.
Sometimes there's two teams though, bro. Like there might be two. Like Arsenal might have two under 11s teams, depending on how much talent there is out there.
And you've got over a dozen players that are supported by 15 to 20 people who are all salaried, pensioned up, but like all that type of stuff. But we want to act surprised. And I think also, if we actually boil it down, right, like people are like, oh, I've been reading on Twitter, Conor Gallagher, since the turn of the year, best midfielder, is now on a hot streak. You can't sell him. They sell him, I'll never support the club. Or like Marcus Rashford, blah, 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 one of our own, all this type of stuff. But if you think about it purely as a business, right? And this is one of the things that Jim Ratcliffe said, that he was like, everyone is for sale at the right price. Like we need to Cole Palmer, right? Cole Palmer, Chelsea's, when clubs say they're untouchable, you see in the NFL and the NBA, people are saying Anthony Edwards is untouchable. If somebody came in and was like, okay, we'll give you, okay, like, do you know what? We'll give you Giannis, we'll give you Dame, 6 first-round picks, and one of our young kids coming. Are you telling me like Minnesota Timberwolves are like, nah, everyone has a price. And invariably, like if Cole Palmer, if somebody came in now with 200 million, you're telling me Todd Bowley doesn't pick up the phone and be like, what airport should I drop him off at? So I think there's this narrative of, oh, like, oh, Chelsea is selling players. Anyone at Chelsea right now is up for sale. The only difference that makes Conor Gallagher, that makes all these other guys at risk, is they've got less years on their contract. Like, look at Tosin Adarabioyo. Right now, this is what I always ask fans, like mates, support clubs. Would you prefer they run their contract down and they walk Andreas Christensen, Antonio Rudiger, that they walk, or you get a fee? Or do you pay them? And this was something that like struck me this afternoon when I knew we were going to talk about this topic, right? If you're a top tier team, everyone is looking at the Marcus Rashford and the Jadon Sancho scenario, where they had a couple of good seasons. Everyone was like, pay them, pay them, pay them. United paid him to the tune of 300,000. Sancho, we know his was beef, and bro, just don't apologize. You've like, it's too late now. If you apologize now, it just throws everything. So don't apologize. But Rashford and him are both from 300k roughly. We're now in a position where they can't get them off the books, even if they wanted to, because there are very few clubs that can pick up that salary. And if I'm Todd Bowley and Bedadik Barry, I'm like looking around going, okay, we revamped the whole payment model of this club to be lower bases, better incentivization to increase salaries, to reduce our total salary. I think they shaved off like 84 million off the club salary. We go and give Conor Gallagher 200k, 250k. He's 24, about to turn 25. In 2 years' time, he's kind of at that midfield age where you're peaking and you're not going down the hill, but you're now getting to the top of your levels, unless you're like a Xavi and Iniesta, where you just don't age, or one of these elite midfielders like Modric, and you're still balling out at 38, or whatever it is. They will struggle to get him off the books on those numbers if he's still not operating at that level. And one of the things I always loved is this American analogy I've seen in the NBA, in the NFL and baseball, and I'm not sure if you've come across it, where it says, if I'm not sure about a guy, better sell them and let somebody else take the risk.
Yeah. Like, you'd rather be a season early than a season late.
That's why I'm like, if you're not sure about him and you don't want to pay him the 200k, you're better off going Tottenham, West Ham, 60 mil. Connor, love you. The store will always be open to you and your family. You're a legend at the club, even though you've not been there that long. 7 till 26 or 25. Amazing run. A lot of kids didn't even make it pro or get a contract. 200 games. Congrats, mate. We'll watch you and we look forward to playing against you. We wish you a great career.
Yeah, I guess the flip side that we've not touched on is that actually English players are maybe more attractive now in the European market than before. And that goes back to my other point about them actually being better players than previously. And that's why there is such a focus around potentially selling these players, because the talent level is higher. Like, people can actually see a Jude Bellingham fitting into my Real Madrid team. They can see, a Sancho in my team in like Dortmund, which is a German powerhouse, or think of some other Chelsea players that have gone to Italy. Like, they can. Whereas before in the early 2000s, they were like, bro, Lee Catmull can't come to me. like I don't want. Do you know?
He was at Man United, wasn't he?
That's what I'm saying. But that level of that wasn't attractive to like our European neighbors. You know, the kind of technical ability of the players that we were pumping out at that time. So now with the fact that they are technically up there with the rest of their European counterparts, a lot of like you think of the Phil Fodens, the Cole Palmers, the Rashford. That I'm not saying like they can compete, is what I'm saying. Whereas before, a lot of our what we thought was our talented players, our Theo Walcotts, people were like, yeah, that's not it.
I don't think anything's changed. I think the quality of the top end ones has got better, but the in between middle of the road is still as large. Like, let me just list you these names. When I told you I was thinking about it today, right? Dominic Solanke, Tammy Abraham, Lewis Hall, Valentin Livramento, Tariq Lamptey, Jude Sunsut-Bell, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Fikayo Tomori, Andreas Christensen, Billy Gilmore, Mason Mount, Patrick Van Arnold, Ryan Bertrand. Of all those academy players, and I know fine, Andreas Christensen came from Bromby at 15, 16, if we want to start going into all this stuff, right?
His football education was here, though.
Yeah, of all the players Chelsea let go, with exception of Loftus-Cheek, Tomori and Christensen, how many do the club look back on and would you say have been successful? Because if we actually think about it, Christensen got let go only because of the transfer embargo and they couldn't sign him to a contract. Tomori got sold from a business perspective because they just really needed the money, but they wouldn't have liked to sell him. Loftus-Cheek couldn't stay fit. Like his wasn't. So if you think, did Abraham, Lewis Hall, Livramento, Lamptey, Soon,
those people were still talented enough to find opportunities abroad. But in the day, those players were not going abroad. They were.
Oh no, agree. No, I take the point. I mean, the point I'm saying is like I always say.
I'm not, and neither am I saying that then that the clubs are missing out on them, because I'm not sure that they will. They'll say the pros that will happen in those unique circumstances for each player outweigh the cons that we're seeing now. So I believe that, but I think that with why we're seeing a like added value to English players is because that you can now sell them to a whole nother market which we did not have previously. So
I agree with you. No, I agree with you. I think, and that's where I'm saying you can now sell them for more, but we've always been able to sell them. What's changed is the market that we could sell it to has expanded, and that's because the perceived value has grown, and because obviously England have also done really well at age group level.
Yeah, I think
these players to put their talents on the market. But I guess
there was one thing I saw. I think it was up until is it 2013? From 1994 to 2013, we'd won 5 European or world honors at the various like younger age groups. Yeah, so under 17s or under 19s. So and like since then, so if you think that was like 20 years, 94 to 2013, we won 5. But since then, we've won bare. We've won like 8 or not one runners up or
one
in the various like men's age groups. And so and that's what 10 years compared to double, almost 20 years. And so you can see that the talent is there.
Of course, yeah. No one will doubt that.
Which means that the added value is there, which means the market is there in order to sell them to. Because otherwise, we could have all these English players and people like, yeah, we want to get rid of them. We need to balance the books, like PSIs, but they would have nowhere to go. But I think, but when you invest in a product, like you invest in making an iPhone the best iPhone that there is, it ends up being the most expensive handheld phone that you can buy. You know that at that time. So that's why I think the level of input that's been put into players is really something that we should actually consider in your way. And I think a lot of this isn't immediately obvious and visible to a lot of people, but it may be actually more visible to you if you start thinking about where are these young English players going. And some of them are going from like 16, 17, 18. We haven't even mentioned Marciola, who was it was involved in England with Bellingham, and obviously now at Bayern. I think he's German born, to be fair, so we might not claim him as such, but I think he was in the England caps from like single digits age. Again, so like there's been investment in them. There's been an incredible amount of resource attached to kind of making them like elite footballers, or you know, in some cases, footballers that you can plug and play in any league, particularly European league where the money is, and therefore you're hopefully then going to get your money. You're going to get your money back for your loss-making academy.
And I guess just the feeling for me with all these players selling is that I look at it from a perspective like, and this is where it must be hard to be executives, right? Who would do the job? You give Conor Gallagher the contract in line with his position, right? And 3 years' time, he turns out to be, this is the best Conor Gallagher we ever see. 7-goal season, 5 assists. People say, what were the club doing? Stupid decision. Oh my God, silly money. He's actually now holding up a place of an academy player we're playing him ahead of an 18-year-old who he's stifling that player's growth, right? That will be the argument that's made. You now can't get him off the books. Marcus Rashford getting booed by United fans. Can't get him off the books. You can't sell him. So he just sits there on 200k, 200k, 200k. You send him on loans to try and get rid of him. And then we have an English Hakim Ziyech position. Don't forget, he's still on our books till next year. That always blew my mind. I thought he was gone. So you create this, like, people act like the Chelsea Academy. And I think this is where fans aren't pragmatic, but are emotionally invested, where therefore that's what clouds their judgment. The Chelsea Academy, the Arsenal Academy, the Crystal Palace Academy, the United Academy, the Liverpool Academy is good enough that there is probably someone on that level. I remember when we lost Tariq Lamptey, I was like, hey, what's going on? And because Reece James, it was a similar period, like Azpilicueta was coming to an end. I was like, who's going to go right back? Lamptey comes, James is around there. Like Lamptey left, I was like, damn, man, who's going to play left back? Oh, then Livramento left as well, and I was like, damn, who's gonna go in this position? Then Andreas Christensen left, and then Trevor Chalobah came out, and everyone's like, who's this Trevor? Oh, he's Nathaniel Chalobah's brother. Then we're like, who's gonna play midfield? Or Mason Mount. Then Mason Mount leaves. Then you've got Conor Gallagher. There's always a conveyor belt at these top elite academies that I'm always kind of like, there's always another one coming. So why do we act surprised when Ian Martson? Look how many left backs we've let go. Like, this is the pipeline of left backs Chelsea have. Like, Martin's gone, Liveramento's gone, Lewis Hall is gone. Like, and I know people will be like, yeah, but you're paying Cucurella. Fine, I hear you. But there is probably somebody on Martin's level who's 19 that Chelsea value. Achapong, I think he came on against Tottenham. I can't remember if he's I think he's a centre back or right back by trade. They've got like a conveyor belt because their talent system, their coaching, their investment is so good that I think people need to be emotionally invested in the player, but be able to sometimes come out and go, do you know what? If we're letting him go, look at the list of academy players Chelsea have let go. With apart from Loftus-Cheek, who's a good season at Milan, and Tomori, Andreas Christensen, he ran his contract down. Look at the list of players. Who would you say Chelsea have missed on where you're like, damn, man, they shouldn't have leave? And I actually realized I forgot a main guy off our list, the Crystal Palace guy, centre back.
Why can I not think?
That actually pains me that I missed him off the list. But for example,
I'll think about it.
I'm gonna have to do that because that's gonna annoy me. And then the interesting thing, let's see, Crystal Palace centre backs. Where is it? Mark Guehi, right? Also, for the players that are good that Chelsea actually let go, they actually put a sell on or a buyback. So they have a buyback on Mark Guehi. So like where they're like, you know what, we might mess. They even had a buyback on Tammy Abraham. It was they could buy him back after 2 seasons. But he tore his ACL at the end of the second season, which is why that's going to be a no-go. So I kind of see it as in people look at it as sale of players. But the reason invariably they're selling players to balance the books, you could say that the players, it's mismanagement handing out all the contracts. But you and I both know whether it's an NFL contract, an NBA contract, Premier League contract, you're it's like the NFL draft, right? You're picking so many players because you know some aren't going to hit, and it's the same in football. You're having it's like, but why have we got another left back in that position? We already have three. Why are we having another centre back in that position? We already have four. It's because injuries. One, two. Some of them you're like they may not be able to hack it, but you don't know it yet. Some of them you're like maybe they're coming towards the end of the career. Some you just think that they can play multiple positions. So I think it's just that mindset of actually understanding, like Chelsea aren't going to go off a cliff in their midfield if Conor Gallagher goes. Like we've watched this recycle approach of the Chelsea academy system on a continuous basis. If they're selling 4 or 5 academy players a year of like 30, 40 million, that's a bigger question. And then fans can take a position. But right now, for me, Lewis Hall wanted to leave, family Newcastle fans. Martin, I'm sorry, all you fans out there. Oh, look how he's playing at Dortmund. Did you watch him in defence? But that's my first question. Did you watch him in defence? I saw a lot of great.
Huh? More of a left wing back than to me, than kind of Cucurella-ish, like a bit harsh, but yeah.
But that kind of brings us to a close where I'm like, I guess we're seeing more academy players and more first team players. So the reason why balance the books, the reason why they can't balance the books, high their costs of salaries, where they get most of their money from when it's not through sponsorship, TV broadcasting. So they're all connected. And then where the TV broadcasting can't fill the void, new tournaments. So all kind of, or no, revised tournament. They're all kind of interlinked. And I think it'll be interesting as like football, like what we've got, Olympic football this year, got the Euros. It'll be interesting seeing the evolution of this. And I think ultimately, right, there's a risk that all of these things crystallize in different ways, whether it's Gallagher doesn't go, which I know will please you, Nash. You'll be super happy. And
I just think he's been playing well, so yeah. I didn't think he was bad before, to be fair.
This guy, don't make me
like I genuinely, I was like, this guy is a tryhard. Now he's added a bit of quality.
Don't make me attack at the end of this video.
He's kind of lying a bit more, a bit deeper than before.
You're gonna lie to the people. You're gonna make me go on WhatsApp, find it, attach it to the end of the video, circle your name.
I'm just saying, I think he was a tryhard.
You're lucky that I don't have the time to do it, because the petty me would do it, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
All right.
Until then, we'll leave it there and we'll catch up next week.
Let us take care.